Welcome, everybody, to the Baseball Blueprint Podcast, your home for all things player development, where we highlight some of the best instructors in the game. This episode is brought to you by Valley Sporting Goods. Make sure you check out the link in the bio and use code Blueprint10 for discounts on their training equipment. This is also an episode that's been partnered with the Baseball Blue Book Network. Those guys have been incredible. I'm really excited to get into this one. So, today we have Gabe Ortiz, who is a minor league coach with the Miami Marlins. Gabe, thanks for coming on the show, man.
Oh, appreciate having me, man. Looking forward to this. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, guys. So Gabe and I got acquainted at the ABCA. He was on the outfield hot stove, and man, he just had some incredible stuff to say. And I know, at least from my end, you guys know as listeners, this is a very selfish podcast where I'm just trying to get as good as I can be, and I think that benefits the group as a whole. So getting him on the show has been a blessing, and I'm really excited to dive into some different aspects of outfield player development, some contrast between the high school level and professional baseball. And now, Gabe. Can you give us a little bit of a rundown about your current role with the Marlins?
So I'm entering my second year with the organization. I'll be in the Dominican Republic at the academy, and like I was talking about earlier, it's mainly on the defensive side of things. But down there, we have two teams running out of that academy, and it's kind of we wear different hats, all hands on deck. I might be emphasizing the defensive side, but that doesn't mean I'm jumping in the cages and feeding machines and flipping balls and helping anywhere I possibly can, and that's welcome. I'm all about that. So it's something I'm in, and I really enjoy.
Yeah, man. And I think one of the contrasts from the outside looking in that people are going to want to know is what's been the biggest transition from you working from, having a really, really good high school program, bouncing now into you're working with professional high school age kids?
To be honest with you, man, there's a lot of similarities. I can't speak for the higher levels, but at the high school level, I was blessed with a really good group of kids who were they love to work. The work ethic was impeccable. They're enthusiastic and they're open-minded and willing to learn. And when I got down to the island, it was the same thing. The enthusiasm was off the charts. Everything you hear about the Latin player, it's real. But they were, one, super respectful, which was awesome to work with. And then two, they're open-minded, their willingness to learn, they're very coachable. And, anytime you have that environment where you have kids who are willing to work, willing to be coached, and enthusiastic about learning the game, like that's just something that you enjoy going to the game or to the yard every day and working with those kind of players.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. And one of the questions that came up during the hot stove for those of you who are listening that weren't able to go were what are some of the more difficult coaching points that you want to address when it comes to working with these really, really talented high school age kids? And so I'd love for you to speak on a little bit about the outfield arm and kind of figuring out ways to play that best.
Yeah, so kind of going back to the high school, and the outfield thing really started and to me, I'm old, I guess, by age, but I look at myself as a young coach because I'm always willing to learn, and I still view myself as someone trying to figure this out. So starting in my coaching career, like anybody, like you, like for example, when you get into coaching after playing, they kind of filter you in, the position that you played when you were, obviously, playing. So I got filtered into being an infield guy because I played the infield growing up and playing in college. And so I didn't get, to the outfield aspect until I got an opportunity to coach at the junior college level at Arizona Western. And that's where it was kind of, okay, well, let's kind of shift gears and get obsessed with the outfield and start watching video and bring stuff down. And the low hanging fruit was the ground game. I was trying to figure out like, okay, what are similarities? And, ground balls to the outfield. There's a lot of similarities when you're teaching outfield stuff, the posture, the glove position, reading hops. So I kind of dove in there first with our athletes. And then what I'm finding out as I got into that, our decision-making kind of really cleaned up. So to answer your question, I think, one of the hardest part is kind of improve the baseball IQ, not necessarily what to do when you have the baseball, but how to migrate towards the baseball and how to get better angles and how to cut the distance off. And then once we secure the baseball, where are we going with it? Whether it be lead base, trail runner, hit a relay, let redirect. So when teaching the outfield, that's kind of where I started, was on the ground. And I've noticed right off the bat, like, hey, we're making better decisions once we secure the baseball in the outfield.
That's awesome, man. And I think when you think about that concept, it makes sense, but we really don't work on it as much. I'm using my own experience here, but I'm not addressing pocket presentation the same way in terms of intent as I would with my infielders. And I caught that early on last year when I was at Eckerd. And that slowly turned into like, why am I teaching this any different? Like when we
Yeah.
receive the ball on the ground, we're receiving it on the ground, right? And so when we hold our angles and even we talk about hand flexion when we go to receive the ball, a lot of outfielders like to get scoopy, like they flip up.
Hmm.
And so
Yeah.
they give themselves really little window for error, especially when it's a do or die play, when they're trying to rush to a transition. And in your experience, when you're trying to initiate that, is an early work type drill series something that you would go about addressing that space?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, like there's really no like in its simplest forms, there's a ball being struck at us. It's either bouncing or skipping. We have to get a great hop, secure it, and make an accurate throw somewhere. I mean, that's on the
Yeah,
dirt or in the outfield, right? So at the simplest form, that's what we're doing. So on the early work or like some routines, like we weren't afraid to break out, the infield training models, the little paddles and the smaller gloves. And once we're able to understand, okay, get them to understand how we're reading hops, like whether it be dirt, grass, dirt, or grass, dirt, and kind of close that distance. And just like an infielder, like you're reading hops and trying to pick the best one coming forward with momentum. Same thing in the outfield. And what the cool part was, once we started migrating left and right towards the gaps, and they can utilize backhands and forehand spins. I mean, there's an outfielder right now at our high school. I saw him playing a fall game. We do on the runs, and every ball that he comes in on center field, he's throwing on the run to a relay guy or third base. It's awesome. So like, and that kind of gets some buy-in too for the outfield because they look over and they see the infield with all the cool drills and the cones and all that kind of footwork, fancy stuff. But once you start kind of opening up the outfielder to be athletic, to almost be three shortstops in the grass like that, I think that creates a little more buy-in. And like I said, it creates a pretty good defender out there as well.
man, that's so good, dude. And I know that for the high school outfielders out here listening to this, they're like, "Amen." This is great stuff because again, even as a coach in the infield, it's kind of difficult to find like accessible outfield information. And I think one of the best things that I've seen lately are the ABCA Barnstormer events that you guys kind of travel across the country and do. And you spoke at one of those, and now you guys spoke on integrating different movements into your warm up routine and stuff like that. But for the people who haven't had an experience to kind of get in and dive into the Barnstormer stuff, can you explain to them what that is and how to get involved?
Yeah, so I mean, it all comes down to the ABCA and any coach. I mean, we were just there this past week, and there six thousand, 7,000 coaches there. And to be honest with you, if I can't plug it enough, I mean, to plug Ryan Brownlee at the ABCA, I mean, if you're a baseball guy, you have to be there every year in January and be a member, and that gives you a video library of basically everybody who's ever presented on anything at a convention. And the Barnstormers are just kind of like a prelude to the conventions where they're all regional clinics where they'll get local college coaches and high school coaches, and they'll run over some topics. It's a small group setting, real personable. I mean, there's not a whole lot of there's not a big stage. I mean, we're on the field. We're on the field doing
Yeah,
some demos, and it's really cool to connect with people after. And they'll ask you questions after you present. But really, like you saw Saturday, I'm asking questions too. Like, hey, I'm trying to learn as well. Just because I'm speaking doesn't mean I have by all means all the answers. So I'm trying to figure out some stuff too. But it's a um, really cool avenue for the ABCA. If you can't get to the national convention, they come to a town or location near you.
that's awesome, man. That's awesome. Again, shout out Ryan Brownlee. He's been on the show before. The ABCA, if you haven't been involved with them, check that out. You'll be able to find information on that within the Baseball Blue Book app. That's free. You guys can check that out. If you're a player, coach, vendor looking to get your information out there, make sure you get involved with that because it's going to give you a really wide network of people who are really active in the space currently. Again, because that app is relatively new. So check that out. Gabe, let's dive into your background a little bit. Can you give us a little bit about your journey as a player? And I know you mentioned coaching at the junior college level and the high school level, but just a little bit about how your playing career sculpted your teaching process and who you are as a coach.
Yeah, well, I mean, the playing career wasn't as extensive as a lot of guys. I was a high school guy that was just okay at best, I guess, maybe a slight above average, but just loved the game and was able to go to a small JUCO in Southern California and transfer out to Concordia University in Irvine, California. And I knew early on that I was on borrowed time after high school, with this game, but I knew that there was nothing else that I was passionate about, that I was interested in. So I knew coaching was going to be the route. So as soon as I graduated and finished playing at the University of Concordia, I jumped into coaching right away. I was fortunate enough to get a job at my alma mater at Copa High School. And unlike a lot of coaches, you'll see there's a lot of stops in the road. I don't have very many stops, man. I started coaching, and I'll date myself in 2004, and I was an assistant coach at the high school for a long time, and then had an opportunity to coach at the JUCO in 2017, 18, and 19 at Arizona Western. And for those of you that are familiar with the JUCO game, the Arizona Conference is pretty tough, man. With Yavapai and Central wins it, often, and that was a pretty cool experience to be in that. And then came back to high school at Kofa and was able to be the head coach for a couple of years, and got a random call from Rachel, and it was the opportunity to be join the Marlins organization was something I felt I couldn't pass up. So here I am, man, just trying to learn and get better.
Yeah, man, and the Marlins are making moves right now. I mean, there's a lot of Mason Sherrill's another one who has been on
Yeah.
the show, who's involved with you guys now. So that's an organization to keep your eye on it for those fans out there to kind of check and see, like, they're going to be a forward thinking team. So I'm really excited to see that organization develop and watch that player development system really thrive, because I've got a feeling under Rachel she's going to make that happen. So
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
still meeting a lot of people, and
mhm,
they're bringing in some people that are really uh, data driven in a positive way.
yeah.
But at the same time, like there's a lot of development guys coming on board. It's pretty exciting. So we're kind of getting into meetings here and there in the off season, and I'm anxious to learn from some of the guys we brought on.
That's awesome, man. That's a great space to be when you got good minds around you. So
Hmm.
let's talk a little bit about just your process when it comes to infield play too, because again, you work a lot with outfielders. You work a lot with outfielders, but as a former infielder, as a former high school, junior college coach, we know that we wear many hats at those levels.
Hmm.
Can you walk us through what your daily routine would be for these high level infielders? And again, I'm taking different pieces of your career and kind of meshing them together, but you're drawing up your infield plan. What does that look like for you?
Well, the biggest thing now, and especially being on the Dominican side of things, I mean, the footwork they have is phenomenal. The athleticism they have, the arm carries, and their glove work is really good. There, the challenge is to understand that they can have a little better recognition of hops. Right, everything's not come forward and go and get rid of. Understanding hops, they can kind of hang back a little bit on certain balls with this different pace. So the training comes into how are we going to have them able to read hops with their feet and understand timing and the internal clock. That they have some time where they can kind of use a 4-step pattern and get through a baseball, or there's some times you have to go glove side rake through and get rid of it, depending on speed of runner and how much they migrate to the baseball on a slower paced ball.
That's awesome, man. And I know a lot of high level guys are working the clock. And I know that's something
Yeah.
that Brandon Zink's been doing at the Bodome too, with just kind of integrating a little bit of that. Hey, keep this in the back of your head, like that play was a 4-6, right? So
Mhm.
maybe we think about our routes, and yeah, you're looking like really secure there, but the average runner is a little bit quicker than that. We might need to take a steeper angle. So, do you guys do any clock work in that space? Does that seem like something that they're on the right track with?
Yeah, and a good example is that 5-6 ball. A lot of guys will go deep on that angle, and they'll like plant the right foot, pat a little bit, and then think they have enough time to kind of let it go. And that's something we noticed right away and addressed. Where not only are we plant, stop, and get on top and release with a quicker release, but at the same time too understanding that we don't have to get that bad angle. If we can get closer to the distance of close image between barrel contact and glove contact, and we can get that and feel it more on the. You were talking with Brandon about I think you're using zones,
Yeah,
zone
yeah,
reading.
zone based
Yeah,
work. Yeah.
I like to call it quadrant zone. Same
Mhm.
idea. If we and then I think you had what one was towards the closest to you.
Yeah, so one's closest to that the defender,
Yeah,
and then three is like closest to the ball striker.
yeah. So we were everything backhand. It seemed like they were trying to go in that one zone, 45, and it's like
Yeah,
okay, well that might be the play depending on the pace of the ball. But at the same time, like if it's not struck very hard, then we can kind of go in zone two, cut that off, get the feet moving, and
exactly.
shorten the distance and throw as well too. So that was kind of like I said, low hanging fruit. That like hey, we can kind of clean this up really quick with a couple of drill sets.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Now, coming from the high school level to again bouncing to a level where you've got the same age players, maybe physically a little bit different, maybe a little bit more talented from a pure just essence of the game standpoint. What did the scheduling look like for you? How big of a difference was that?
It the way the schedule worked in the DSL, it was kind of similar to a high school game day,
Okay.
where in the DSL we play every day, played every day at 11 o'clock. So the guys are up at around 6:37, and then they kind of run through their daily activity. They always start with activation, which is their warm up. They'll have some sort of S&C strength conditioning aspect of it. They'll have some education. We'll get them on the defensive work, get them in the cage to get their swings off and get their rhythm going, and then get them in the clubhouse to give them something to eat, change, and we play at 11.
Yeah.
So very similar to a game day in high school where you get them out after school. We're getting them down to the field. We're stretching them out. We're kind of doing some individual defensive stuff. We hit on the field, and then we jump into our pregame and outfield. We had a little clubhouse behind our dugout. We change them out. They have peanut butter and jelly, and then we play. So it was kind of similar. Obviously, the DSL schedule is a little more lengthened out. When we're there from 7, they play at 11, and we're getting done at 2:33 sometimes. And there's post game stuff. But yeah, I mean, same kind of order of operation, just a little more extended on the DSL side.
That's awesome, man. Wow. Wow. Okay. So let's get a little bit into kind of some guys who've sculpted your journey and maybe some of the teaching processes you have. So can you give us a couple names where like, man, that guy's impacted my journey?
It's funny. I still think that I'm still trying to figure this out, and I'm still trying to, um, you know, get molded and figure out how I still want to go about this. I'm still, like I said, in the learning phase, or the buzzword of growth mindset. Early on, my high school coach, Bill Laguna, he was the first guy to kind of show some enthusiasm, how fun coaching can be, and kind of set that environment. And then from there on, I mean, it's just kind of who you run into. It's the experience I've had and the places I've been, whether it be a conference or a clinic or some of the organizations and teams I've been on. Like you meet new people, and you kind of migrate to them, and you kind of pick their brains, and you find out like, hey, this works. I'm gonna apply this to how I'm teaching, because you're always trying to evolve as a coach, right? Like, I mean, I'm a little on the older side, so what I was doing 10, 15 years is not what I'm doing now in a positive way. And you're a young cat, so like you're gonna see here 5 years from now, like looking back, like, hey, I did this. I can do this a little better than I was doing in the past. So I'm constantly evolving, man. And point in case, 2019, when the COVID stuff was going around, kind of blessing in disguise, I jumped on a random Zoom. It was an outfield Zoom, and that's where I met Brownlee and Berto, Zach, Plaw, and Jake, and we kind of formed like a group chat, just kind of chit chatting and kind of throwing stuff out and ideas and challenging each other. And it's crazy. We're still friends to this day. And I mean, it took literally a year and a half for us to meet like face to face. But every year at the ABCA, we get together. And it's like a reunion. But guys like that, like, I mean, they challenge you, and they sculpt who you are, and they help you evolve as a coach, and kind of how you're conveying messages to the players you have in front of you.
That's wild. Yeah. And I think that's a common trend with the people we have on, like, have a good core of people around you that can help
Yeah.
like check you when your ideas are getting a little bit too much, and then like some guys who can kind of push your ideas forward, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we're as
100%.
limited as we are. I mean, as a group, things get so much better. And I think when I look at the hot stove panels that have been set up by the ABCA, a lot of times we'll break up into different groups. Now, I love breaking up into groups because you can kind of flow and hear different voices.
Mm-hmm.
But I do also like the concept of like a collaboration of like that person who's speaking is able to kind of give input, and maybe, ooh, that's a good idea. Maybe I can use that. So that give and take is super powerful, right? And I think that's one of the things
Yeah.
you guys did so well with the outfield Zoom. I mean, you guys crushed that, and being able to hear like
Thanks.
the way the questions are worded. Sometimes, again, it's just us average Joes out there kind of pitching the questions, but when you get into it, it's like, man, you know, if it's a thought provoking concept, that's value there. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so, in terms of getting stuff out of it, I know for the masses, we really appreciate you guys sharing your information and being willing to get out there and talk shop. You know?
Yeah, and you know how it is, like baseball people, like they're willing to share and talk, like, and that's how, I mean, that's how we met. Like, I reached out to you, like, hey, like, what do you got on this? Like, this is you're doing a great thing, and we connect, and it's like now I have another resource of someone to bounce ideas off. And we talked Saturday for an extended period of time, and just the eye angles we were talking about. It's like, yeah, that's interesting. I never viewed
Yeah,
it that way, and now it's kind of my head, like, okay, how can I digest it, repackage it, and then kind of convey it to the athletes I have in front of me at the time.
that's awesome, man. That's awesome. All right, so here's a question I love asking. We're gonna give you a time machine here, Gabe. We're gonna pretend it's real. You go back 5 years in time, and you can talk to yourself. What advice are you giving yourself?
Oh, 5 years. I think in general, I mean, to any coach that's starting out, I mean, I think there's a few things that come to the top of your head. Is like, one is the work ethic. Like, and I know that's cliche, but there's really no substitution for the work. Like, the work, whether it be on the field, extra stuff with the mound care, or hitting the batter's box, or hitting a guy extra fungo, or even the cognitive side. Like, you're diving deep into websites, or on social media, or reaching out to people. Like, you know trying to always expand your knowledge and have a growth mindset, I think is huge, and be able to reach out to people. I think Butch talked about that was, don't be afraid to reach out to a random stranger and ask,
Yeah.
what they got going on. Like, and personally, I'm not a social guy. I mean, that sounds crazy, but I'm really not. Like, if you get me in a normal setting, a restaurant or a bar or a club, I'm kind of awkward, man. I'm in the corner and I'm like on my phone, like, when is this, this event going to end? But you get me around baseball people, man. I think I maybe had 10 or 12 new contacts this weekend at the ABCA. Yeah, I'm just not afraid to go like, hey, how you doing? Introduce myself. And I just saw you speak here. Like, what do you got on this? How does it work here and there? So I think being open to learning, trying to better yourself. And it's not just to like network to kind of get ahead or to the next level. It's really coming down to like developing yourself and making yourself the best version for the players that you currently have and who you're trying to obviously make them better. So the better you can make yourself with information and how you distribute information and how you're running drills and how like you're learning the learner, so to speak, and then that's going to help you with the players that you have in front of you at that moment.
Wow, man. Wow. Yeah, and it's funny. Like, again, that's a question we love to ask on the show. And one of the things that people mention, uh, I mean, we talk about anxiety, we talk about just maybe a lack of confidence, but consistently the thing that pops up is like continue learning, continue getting better,
Right.
right? And I think you've even, I mean, I'm sure you felt this in the game too, where like it's not just that we're learning things new from like Statcast and Hawkeye data because we are, but I think from a delivery mechanism, like we can always be better communicators,
Absolutely.
right?
And
And,
that and
and
that's kind of where like the education part, because I was a teacher for, like I said, I was a high school coach, so you had, you're not a full-time coach, you're a teacher. So I taught weight training for 18 years, and as the education process grew, like we're talking about different training instruction, that was the big takeaway for me, was having a classroom with literally 30 different learners and learning styles, and how can I take what the topic that we're trying to convey, and how can I differentiate my instruction to where either where it be an external cue, internal cue, a side conversation. How can I convey that my knowledge to them, or whatever topic may be, so that the masses can understand it and kind of digest in their own way.
that's fantastic. And I think again, just something that I'd love to know too. When you're in that teaching space, right? And again, that's something where I'm currently teaching it in that space now, and I feel like comparatively to lessons, right? And in athletics, I feel like there's a lot more visual learners. That's my take on it. More
Mhm.
visual heavy learners. In the classroom, I've been forced to really dig into content more because I've got to know my content so well to be able to deliver that in multiple ways. Is that the same
Right.
thing you found in that space too?
Absolutely. I mean, you have to kind of know it inside and out, and that way. And that's the thing too. You welcome feedback, not only from what their performance, but you welcome feedback on how you're instructing. And I think that the best time I had with that was at the junior college level. They're a little bit older. We had some kickbacks, and most of the junior college guys don't want to be there. I mean, they
They're
think they
trying
should
to
be at
get
a
out.
D one
Yeah,
school. Yeah, they want to be at a D1 school, or think they should have been in the professional game at that point, being drafted. So that was kind of the best, feedback two-way street we had, to where we weren't necessarily coaching energy and enthusiasm and work. It was like, okay, hey, this is where we're at. This is where we need to be. Let's get your feedback, and how do you want to progress and how do you want to develop, and let me aid you in this process and kind of be a small footprint, and you moving forward and moving on.
wow, wow. That's powerful, man. That's great, and I think that's a great way to think about it. Wow. And so for those listening, I want to give you a little background into how these episodes work. So for the most part, while we're recording these, I'm trying to keep this thing rolling and trying to stay um, kind of flowy with the questions and things like that. Uh, but one of my favorite pastimes is going back in and taking notes, because I feel a little uncomfortable taking notes in the middle of the conversation. But I guarantee you, for you listeners out there, I'm going to have pages and pages of notes on this chat because, again, if you haven't heard him live either, please go check out Gabe at some point. I'm sure you're gonna stay involved with ABCA and hopefully be on more panels and things like that. But this is a must see guy. We'll have his social media information accessible as well through the app. Make sure you check him out. And I'm telling you, man, this guy's going places. Gabe, this has been a pleasure, dude. I've had so much fun talking with you.
Hell yeah, man, this is awesome. I appreciate it, man.
Well, again, thank you to Valley Sporting Goods for sponsoring this episode. Thanks for the partnership to the Baseball Blue Book Network. And Gabe, man, it's been awesome, fellas. We're gonna talk to you guys later with the next episode. Thanks for watching.